I'm Jhey Tompkins, I'm a DevRel engineer at Google, and without further ado, here we go. Right, take the lowly input type range. We know the one, you grab it, you drag it, you do a little bit with it. It's pretty boring, right? But with new things in CSS, you can do things like changing accent color, which is kind of cool, right? Now it's green and the track updates and it does some nice things for you. But where could you take it? Well, you could map the value as you go along and maybe you change the color, and that's quite cool. It goes from red to green. And then it makes you think, oh, I've seen that before. It's kind of like an EQ bar when you do like an audio visualization. So could you do that? Well, you could. You could just take a load of inputs and you could chuck them all in a row, and now it's actually working. It never works when I develop it locally. It just seems to turn up on the stage. So good. Well done. All right, so what is creative coding? I like to think of it as expression through the impractically practical. I did look up the definition on Wikipedia, and I was quite depressed when it told me it was creative over function, which I thought kind of put it down, and I didn't really like that, so I just ignored it, as I've crossed it out. So we're going to go with the impractically practical. It's practical in the sense that you're making things, you're solving problems, which is a transferable skill elsewhere. Before we go any further, the obvious one, you are not me. And your perspective is very different to mine. Also, this is not for everyone. If you don't want to do creative coding, you don't have to. But it's quite cool, and I like it, and I'm going to talk about it. So the what, the how, and the why. These are questions that are going to come up often. You'll often get asked why. Why did you bother making that with CSS? Why didn't you? Oh, that's good. Oh, cool. That wasn't part of the slide. Something always likes to pop up. You'll often get asked, why did you make that thing with CSS? Why didn't you just use an image? Well, I did it because I wanted to learn how to do things like layouts and colors and gradients and all that sort of thing. The how is how you're going to do it, and the what is what you should really be focusing on in this context. What the hell is it you're going to make? So here's some things I've made, some random things, and they all have stories, and people tend to like that one at the top right. And the why. Supercharge your learning. It's the title of the talk. You should know that already. Go beyond the docs. This is important because documentation tends to give you a happy path. It tends to take you down a road where this is where we want you to go, this is the solution, everyone's happy, until someone says they have a problem, and then everyone heads to Stack Overflow. So the good thing about creative coding is it makes you a great problem solver, and that is a great applicable skill. And the further you go, and the more you don't think about the why, and you start thinking about the what, you become unlimited by your tech stack, and the only limit is your imagination. And of course, you can't really do yarn add super obscure thing or npmi, this very niche UI component, but for React, I mean, you probably can. But the web platform's amazing, and when you fully understand or try to grasp the fundamentals, you essentially future-proof yourself when things evolve and change over time. I still have nightmares about Backbone Marionette, if anyone knows that one. So still coming up with a visualization for this as well. But I like to think that perspectives and all of our perspectives fuel creativity, which then fuels innovation. And why is there a wiggling phone emoji? Well, I'm pretty sure it's Motorola. I said this last time, and I'm always terrified to say this line that someone's going to fact-check me on the way out. But Motorola developed the phone in the 80s, I think, and it was like a big briefcase. And if no one had gone and said, I'm not a fan of that, I'd like it to be smaller, everyone would have a briefcase today with them, an extra chair. So it's kind of good that happened. We have touchscreens, small devices, flip phones, tablets, whatever. We even have it on our wrists these days. And this part's important. Make for yourself. I didn't want to call you all selfish, so I just animated a big puffer fish. But that's essentially what you need to do. Make for yourself. Make things that interest you, spark your curiosity, spark your creativity, that motivate you. If you're going to make something that you're not really interested in, it's just going to become another stagnant side project in the GitHub cemetery. So this one top right, I always like to say this one because recruiters tend to love it. I made a project that allows you to manipulate your GitHub commit history. You go on an app and it uses Netlify, which Phil will like. A bit of serverless, and it... Yes! Yes, one has gone off. Good, they work. I think they come from a cheap shop.
Sorry.
So, yeah, and it's always a good talking point. And yes, it's not the most practical thing. I'm not going to have it up on a product hunt anytime soon. But I learned a lot from it, and these are skills that I can use elsewhere. Edge functions, I think I did some React, some Canvas work, and things like that. So, the how. Have a look at these 5 things for a second. Just take a moment. I don't really have enough time because we need to cram everything in, but what instantly comes to mind for you? Yep, just check under your seats. So these ideas are just keywords that I will have written down at some point, and I've plucked them out of Notion or wherever I've kept them. And these all give me things that I think, do you know what, I could make that. I'm going to sit and have a go at doing it. Infinifill is a particularly interesting one that I'm looking forward to making. Phil can't wait for that. So train it. Start a list and just start writing down keywords. I use various means. It can get a bit unwieldy, so try and keep it organized. But don't worry about if your ideas aren't something you're going to make straight away. That's intentional. No idea is a bad idea, because you might write a keyword down now that you might think, I don't really fancy that at the moment. But when you go back through the backlog later, when you're hitting a creative slump, you might think, that would actually be pretty cool, or it sparks something else. And this leads on to this. Plucking ideas out of nothing is something you can train your mind to do over time. I'm often asked, where do all the ideas come from? I don't know. I just keep writing them down, and it's something that I can just sort of do, you know. I have some props here today, which will show you. And these are sources of inspiration. I just like to write something up. But that bottom point is very true. I think I've created something like over 1,400 CodePen demos, and I can give you a story for the majority of them. And you can get inspiration from outside. I know, that is crazy. Right, 5 minutes and 10 lifetimes. This is also an important one. When people say, I don't have time for extracurricular coding, when am I going to do that? That's fine if you don't have time for it, but it's essentially up to you how long it takes. You can have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 days. It's really up to you. I've whipped up some demos today that have taken 5 minutes, and there are some that have taken 12 hours, and I've wanted to throw the laptop across the room. But the other part is the 10 lifetimes, and the more you start collating ideas and collecting them, the more you need to get okay with the fact of not being overwhelmed by the amount of them. You will essentially need 10 lifetimes to create them all. So, back to what, how, and why. We need to banish the thought of why in this context. And we're not really worried about how. We're just going to think about what, and then we're going to think, what could we use, what could we learn with the how? And with that, we're going to rush through loads of examples, and hopefully some of it's good, and hopefully it sparks some ideas for you. We're not going to do a technical deep dive, though. One, we haven't got enough time, and I kind of want to keep it a bit open. So I work on the CSS UI and DevTools team, and I like to do my talk by doing a bit on CSS, a bit on UI, and a bit on DevTools. So if we dig into CSS, and today we're going to look at CSS has, which is an absolute game changer when it is coming, but it's not available yet. This is going to be Chrome Canary today. It is about in Safari. You can check it out on Can I Use. But this was prompted by an interaction with Kent Dodds, and fueled by Star Wars. It might make sense as we go along, but I had an idea for something I wanted to make, and I thought, could I do it with just CSS? And then has popped up, and yeah, here we go. And yeah, there is a game related to that bottom right GIF as well. That was a recent offsite. Right, so if you haven't seen has is like the parent selector for CSS, but it's more than that, as Brahma stated on the last slide. You're able to target an element based on a conditional environment. So we have the element we want to target has some selector combo list thing. So if I could say, if the body has an ID red that's checked, then I change the background of the body to red. this has lots of possibilities, and it's one of those that we really need people to try out more, because then we can understand like different use cases and things. I've got a few here, a few of the poster boys for Has, but I'm really interested to see where people would use it. And if that example wasn't good, we could do it something like everyone. If we had the element everyone has an element a good time, then we could have an animation of party for the duration of around an evening, potentially, depending on curfews. And yeah, just a repeat at the bottom there. You're grabbing the parent or the target based on its children and surroundings. This does take a bit of a mental flip, and I thought everyone communicates via memes these days, so why not use ICANN has cheeseburger, an absolute classic. So we're going to go with cat has a cheeseburger, and I'm grabbing an element with a cat emoji class name and updating the pseudo element before with the content of the emoji I want. So cat has no cheeseburger, cat is sad. But when cat has a distant cheeseburger with the sibling combinator, we can update the content to frown. We see there's a div in the middle there. It's not directly the sibling. We go a bit further, cat gets a bit more excited because now he's got a direct sibling and that cheeseburger is getting very close. So direct sibling combinator in there. Remember, we're flipping the model. It is weird. I've had to train it a bit. But then cat does get cheeseburger. It's inside, hurrah. And we can do a little bit of animation with it. Appreciated. Should have brought more of them. So that's a little primer on Has. And then we're going to try and get more into it, some actual practical things, although I would love to see animated emojis all over your websites. That would be fantastic. But yeah, flip the mental model. So here we can actually do some practical things. So if we had a form, typically you might do some weird manipulations or structured markup to do something like this. So here I have this form, and I can type in an email address, and you can see the color is changing there because I've got focus. I haven't got that as a code example on the left, though. But as soon as I enter a valid email address, that's not valid. If I come off, it goes red. Now, I'm not doing anything here with JavaScript. I'm just saying if this label has an invalid input as a direct sibling, I want them both to go red, which is pretty amazing. It's not something we've been able to do before. And there's green just to prove it wasn't a fluke. The clicker doesn't work when you interact with the demos. Come on, it's your second talk now. All right, form group is a different example. So you don't have to target the exact thing. So here I'm saying if a form group has a valid input, then update a scope custom property that I can then apply to the input and the label. And then that bottom one's a little bonus. So if the form group has a valid input, then grab the sibling that's type submit. And then I can do stuff with that. So we go here, it goes all green, which is great, right? Happy path. Then you can go even further than that. And then if you want to do something like split your labels up into letters, and then let's say when it's valid, I want them to all do a little twirl, then why not, right? So you could even do something like this. Watch that label. Did you miss it? All right. Okay, I'll do it again. Or you could do something really obnoxious and make it jump around. Clients will love it. All right, we'll move on to some... I don't know, I really wanted this one to work. I'm not really a big fan of it, but it's an example of doing things that you might not typically have thought of before and thinking, I wonder if that will be useful at some point. So, you know the classic secret message in UV ink? Well, technically, you could do something like that with just CSS now, because you could do a root. And this was, I guess I kind of shoehorned this one in to show that you can use document element, and then it doesn't care where anything is in the DOM. As long as it says, hey, there's a class revealer and it's active, set this custom property. So here, if I hover over this button and just tap down, you can get some secret messages. So I had to shoehorn in has a cow on request of a colleague of mine. So that's in there. Right. And here's the poster boy, right? Cards. This bit's not particularly exciting, but it is pretty damn useful. A card, standard card, a title, a blurb, nothing amazing. But remember, we're not using any JavaScript here. We're not changing anything. It's just CSS. We're not introducing weird class names or anything. So as soon as I say, probably worth going back there actually, it's display grid to start with. But as soon as I introduce a media element, I can say, hey, do you know what? Now you contain an image. I want to split you into 2 columns. And I don't want to do any classes. Notice how it's still just card. And it's just card title, card blurb, card media. And I'm just saying, look, split it into 2 columns. And then you can take it even further. And if you said you had a feature banner, you could do something obnoxious again, like that. Again, your clients will love it. All right. And this is an important point. I've not quite worked out a good way to sum this up yet, but it does kind of mitigate user error because you're not manipulating classes all the time. Whereas previously you might have written in classes to say something is happening or something has something. The clue is in that sentence, right? You're saying something has something with a class, but you don't need to anymore because it will be built in natively when it eventually comes down the line. And we're going to move into some of the interesting things now. Is it goodbye checkbox hack? Does anyone know the checkbox hack? I know some people will know it. Essentially, if you have an input of type checked and you do some weird markup structure, you can essentially target anything after it, which has led to some pretty incredible CSS creations along the years. I've tried pushing has in various directions, which you're going to see, and I think it's still going to be around. I think it will still be prevalent because the sibling combinator is kind of handy for these things, the old kind of checkbox hack. But it does introduce us to, I guess, semantic markup and magical power still, but we'll dig into it. It's going to be easier by example. So we'll start with another classic. So here I've got a little bit of JavaScript here because I'm just updating an area pressed, area expanded attribute. I'm just toggling it from true to false, but I'm just doing a nav draw. But it's worth noting, not long from now, depending on when we can get it out, pop-up is coming down the line, which is another primitive, and you'll be able to do things like dismiss and push things into a top layer without any JavaScript at all, which is really exciting. It's something else I'm working on at the moment. So what I mean by that is when you, oh look, hide fill here. I obviously forgot to take that out. When you open the drawer, typically you'd want to be able to click here and be like, close it. But that will, oh, we didn't want to do that, did we? That's awkward. Yeah, you want the light dismiss. Well, you'll get that free with pop-up. Here you'd have to write a little bit of JavaScript to do it. But yeah, that's applicable in other ways. You can use has again to do, say, a dark mode toggle. We don't care where the toggle is. It's somewhere down in the DOM. But I'm just saying root has area pressed true in this case. Update some theme variables so we can see it in action. And there it is. But when we move on, we can combine them. And I kind of just wanted to throw this in there. Cool. Look at him, cheeky guy down there. All right. And now we get onto the weird and wonderful ones. Right, so this is one I don't even know why I just came across my mind, and it was 20 minutes later, and here it was. So this is 3 primitives, of which, well, app property you can use in Chromium browsers, but has you can't. So an object view box is behind a flag. So don't go dropping this in production anytime soon. But essentially, this is image zoom without any JavaScript at all via custom properties and a little bit of Houdini. So what I'm doing is I've got Houdini at the top to define a length percentage. And the way object view box works, which is another primitive, it allows you to define a view box on a media element, like an image or a video. And I've obfuscated some of the styles here because you don't just want to see a wall of code. But as we update the view box based on the has of the radio button, so whichever one's checked, so if bus is checked, change the inset top to a different value, and that transition piece is where the Houdini part comes in, because I'm able to transition it. So if we see it in action, you're actually able to do image zoom mapping with no JS at all, and it's pretty exciting what these kind of things are going to enable us to do. But enough of that one, because we haven't got any time. I had to try and remake this. So tic-tac-toe with no JavaScript and just has. It's really handy, but it also shows you some things you can't do. So interestingly here, I'm doing like combinations. So I can say like if there's a combination that's checked. So if has 0.2, which would be here, and 0.4 and 0.6, if they're all checked, then we know that naming isn't great, right? But show 0 would be the result. And then here, this is where I'm having to do sibling combinator. But I'm saying if the board has those siblings. So I have put the inputs in a weird place for that. But what I learned from this is, and something quite prominent in the spec is you can't has a has, which is a mouthful. And what's the top one? Oh, I was doing a weird thing. So all these are kind of like, they're really interesting use cases, but it would be a whole talk on going in on has, and we really don't have the time, I don't think so. But the z-index piece there, when we do the has and change the turn, we're able to calc the z-index and flip the pieces. I was going to get Phil to play me at this, and then it was going to be whether I showed another demo, but I just don't think we have time. So where are you going?
Top left.
Top left. If you win, I'm just going to the next slide. All right. Go on then.
Bottom left.
Oh, he's done me, hasn't he? All right.
Middle. No. No. Yes. Yes.
What? Oh, wait.
Top
What?
right. No. What?
Is it a draw?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Cool.
No.
Oh, what happened there? By default. Oh, what a shame. Right. So that's a little dip in with has. It's hard to fit it all in, and there's so many conversations you can have with it, and we really want people to try it out and come back with use cases for it. So what do I learn from digging in and having a look? What creative sort of methods do I go? And you're about to see what I did go with it. So I learned what has could do. I found that there might be ways to do things with less classes. I'm giving this talk, so that was what I did next. And could I go pure CSS all the way, introduce some 3D, make it more awesome? Obviously, I was running out of things to put in bullet points. And yeah, this is where we went with it. So Phil and Ollie's Biscuit Emporium site was the first thing I could come up with. And here, I have a dark mode, which doesn't use any JavaScript, but does something a little bit interesting as a visual. So all I'm doing is saying, has this toggle in this top right, when that's checked, anywhere in the body, it's on the root, I'm updating a custom property, and I am doing something a bit fiddly here that's probably worth writing about, but this is what it does. What? Oh, did you want to see that again? All right, cool. Oh, how did that get in there? I wanted to call this the dark side of the Phil, but I just couldn't really shoehorn it in there. But things like this are possible. You'll be able to do sort of like these cool 3D visualizations. And that's where the dark side Star Wars thing came from, and a conversation with Kent, and it led me on this path of how I could create it. Now, there is another demo I have, which was inspired by this arcade visit. Now, this is all CSS as well. There's no JS in here. And this is a game where you have to wake up Dino Stan. So you click this dialogue, and you get these moving 3D buttons, and it's all timed because there's some Houdini in here, and I'm definitely terrible at this. Brilliant. I would like to get to the end. But everything here is powered by state via has or custom properties. Gosh, I was much quicker at this at home. Come on. Yep, cool. And you win, and you get a timer, and there's nothing in there. If you want to learn how to do a CSS stopwatch, I recommend checking out my CSS tricks article. Cheap plug. Right, let's move on to some fun stuff. UI, and I really hope this part's going to work. So this was inspired by films. I think I was ill. Could have been COVID, I don't know. But I spent a lot of time watching films. Anyone watch the film Kimmy? No, just me. Oh, gosh, this is awkward. It's basically about someone that witnesses a murder via Alexa. Yeah, as interesting as it sounds. But I thought, I wouldn't mind making that. And then a few years ago, I was on Learn with Jason, one of Phil's colleagues who does a stream, and we did a voice-activated corgi. And I thought, you know what, I could probably do some stuff with that. So let's do some stuff with speech recognition and speech synthesis. So where do you begin? Well, it's as simple as that. You literally can write a tiny little block of code that will listen to input from your microphone. It's important to note, though, that you do need to be online for Chrome services. It's a server-based engine that listens to this, and we're hoping the hotspot on my phone isn't going to absolutely cark it. All right, we've skipped a bit. So if I speak into this and stop, yes, it actually worked. But it stops. It doesn't do anything else, even though it says it's recording. So if we go a bit further, yeah, how do you snoop, right? So the speech recognition instance, you can set a continuous value, and that interim results value allows you to get all the speech that's coming down the pipeline before you get a final result. So if I keep talking now and I can hear Phil or someone rustling over there, will it come up? Haha, you put it down. It's fine, I don't mind you rustling. All right, and then if we update it to interim, yeah, it will actually keep up with us. Good old phone hotspot. And it is pretty good. Like, it will keep up. Sometimes it gets it wrong, and it will get it wrong as you're going along, but then at the end, it'll actually get it right. Yeah, sort of like that. Cool. So, good. That's free. It's a new record. Normally it's apples being thrown. So if you want to change it, though, I found out that you need to tear it down and build it back up. So every time I do a toggle, I'm tearing the constructor down and rebuilding it. And this is quite a good opportunity, right? So these kind of problems that I wouldn't normally encounter, I'm ended up doing some refactoring and, you know, the boring stuff like dry and creating little functions so I can easily toggle it on and off and I'm not repeating myself. So when I take it a bit further, yeah, what if I want to turn it off? Well, you can add a little mute switch, and then you learn more about doing some more dryness and refactoring. So if I turn it off, I could have a little mute, and it turns it off. And then if I turn it back on, it's doing it again. I can flick it to interim, and it's probably not going to work now. No, that's fine. We'll just go to the next slide. But what about the good stuff? That's boring, right? Oh, yeah, OK. We'll do something cool. So what you could do is you could set up a little timer, like an active timer, and then a phrase. And we're going to go with Hey Bristol, because it's really, really creative. And we're going to set up these phrases, like a little action library. And we're going to say, when the phrase is turn the lights, and then we're going to listen for the transcript. So that's what you get. You get an event with a transcript in it. And we're going to trim that, and we're going to work out whether we're doing lights on or lights off. And hopefully it's going to work. And this is the processing part. So that's the actual event you get. You can read through it. You can work out whether it's the final or an interim. And then you can, yeah, play with some timeouts, etc. Let's see it in action. Right. Hey, Bristol. Turn the lights on. It's definitely not going to work. Should we try again? Hey, Bristol. Good from you. Oh, dear. I know the final one works. Right, let's try again. Hey, Bristol. There we go. Turn the lights on. Hey! Oh, thank God for that. That's all a pre-built animation. So you can start doing things like that. And, right, where's the feedback? It's not very, you don't know whether it's doing something or not. I had to stab in the dark and keep making a fool of myself until the text went blue. But you can do stuff with the browser. You can make the browser talk to you with speech synthesis. So
here we go.
Right? That's exactly how I sound.
Here we go.
I thought so.
Gee, just get on with it.
All right, cool. All right. And you get quite a lot of options here. So you can tell I've been really creative with this one. Testing. All right. Let's see
testing 123.
All right. What's Diego sound
Testing,
like?
testing 123.
He sounds like he's under a duvet.
Testing 123.
Very proper. All right. So we take that a bit further. Hey, Bristol. Turn the lights on.
Sure. Turning lights on.
Cool. All right, so that actually works. So we're getting somewhere. And we learned a bit, right? We did some speech synthesis. The API for it is very little. Did I obfuscate the code for it, or did we miss that? Yeah, here we go. So it is literally that little block there. You can grab the first voice, but when you know what the voices are, you can filter them by name or ID and check them out. But where could you take it next? Well, you could just add more commands and things that you might find cool to use on your site. Or I actually built a sat-nav demo where I'd say something like go to home, and it would move around, do a little animation, and change the page. But could you add 3D and things like that? Well, you could. Hey, Phil. Slide to the right.
Time for a biscuit.
Oh, all right. It's not very nice. Hey, Phil. Oh, he's gone for his biscuit. Hey, Phil. Oh, he actually has, hasn't he? Hey, Phil.
What?
Get up here, now. Hey, Phil. Oh, you don't want to know how many times I was shouting at the computer at 4 a.m. All right, should we give it a refresh, see what happens. Hey, Phil. Phil? Hey, Phil. Oh, come on. You're like the last block. All right. Hey, Phil. We're going to have to come back to you. Hey, Phil. Phil's not happy. Right. That's kind of annoying. Hey, Phil. Slide to the right.
Sure. Sliding to the right.
Now, he does a load of other stuff, but I'm just not going to risk it. So we're going to get on to DevTools, because I'm mindful of time. Have I got enough time? Right, we're going to race through this. The source of this, Harry Spotter and the half-rep prints. I normally make jokes with my friends about stuff, and this got my cogs whirring, and yeah, and I started thinking about gestures, and all day, hey, I did some device orientation stuff, and I went on this tangent, so you might guess what's coming. If we think about what we can do with devices, we can actually listen for the axis that we're rotating on and we're moving with accelerometer, and we can tap into a lot of different sensors like gyroscopes and things like that. And the cool thing is when you start listening to those values, you can start mapping them to inputs and things, and you learn about how to map values to different ranges, and you can do something like this, where you have, check a demo out, should work. Yeah, and in Chrome, you're able to do stuff like emulate the sensors. Oh, it looks like I've got caps lock on. Let's try that. Yeah, so you can actually emulate the sensors. So if I turn this on, and go to custom orientation, I can actually move a phone around, and it will actually update this little 3D cube, because it's updating some inputs, and then I'm taking the input change event, and I'm mapping it via custom properties onto this 3D cube, which is kind of cool. Like, I mean, maybe not the most useful thing, but I actually did this for Kent. Dodds had like a parallax thing, and I mapped it, and we could do it on device, and he had like a parallaxy CSS type thing as a proof of concept. But where could you go with that? Well, if I can find the slide, this is going to be awkward, isn't it? This is the point where we break out. All right, let's go like this. If you go a bit further, you can do something like this, which is a demo I made recently. So this is a little safe, and you could actually do something like cracking a safe. And if you actually use this on a device, it actually vibrates as well, because we have a vibration API that you can also use. I still haven't actually added any kind of feedback for when you unlock it, though. So I probably need that speech synthesis in here. And I always end up brute forcing this one. Come on. Really letting me down today. Cool. Everyone loves a bourbon. Isn't that right, Phil?
Yeah.
Yep, cool. Good. Right, now if we go on, we are getting to the end, I promise. Again, all these cool sort of generic sensors you've got access to. And this is where you enter into USB debugging. So I've got a trusty device here. And we can do things like tap into an accelerometer. Now, I don't know. So all you have to do is go to Chrome, inspect, and you should. There we go. You're probably going to get a preview of what's to come. Oh well. And you can grab whatever you're looking at, chuck it into here, and then inspect it, and you can see it. So I'm doing this on device, and you can actually see it, and I can tell you what axes I'm doing, so you might get an idea of what I'm going to be up to in a minute. Yeah, cool. Right, but the only problem is you start digging down that, and you find out accelerometer probably isn't the best choice. So you go back to the drawing board, and I'm like, I really want to make this gesture-based thing. How am I going to do it? So I go back to device orientation, and I find out about device motion. And if I enable both of them, I can listen to acceleration in different axes, but also the orientation. And I go a bit further, and I find that I can get a good full picture of the rotation rate on different axes as well. And when I do that, I can get a demo like this, where I've got everything mapped, so I can work out what I'm actually doing. Now, if I open it and inspect it, it's going to look really good. But it's going to be very small. But you should be able to see that as I'm doing that, I'm getting all sorts of feedback. Now, that green is telling me that I've flicked the device up, and you might get an idea of where I'm going with this. So when I flick it up, all right, down, it goes green. But when I flick it back up, it should go blue. But as I'm able to see all these values and get an idea of rotation rates and acceleration, there's blue, then I can actually move on and start thinking, well, what can I do with this? Could I start making something really cool? So I did. So I moved on to this, and I want you to be a wizard. So if I jump in, please work, unlike Phil, the AI assistant. All right. Now, I've got the phone. Yeah, it's going to stitch me right up, isn't it? Aha! Come on, that's pretty cool, right? All right. Now, you go a bit further than that, and you think, well, what else can I do? All right, go down nostalgia lane. What have I got here? Oh, gosh, don't do that. Oh, just, all right. Bear with. But this one's a pain, and my wrists actually hurt from doing this throughout the night. So, not that filthy. All right. So, let's see if this works. Right. Come on. That's pretty cool. And it'll do bigger fireballs. That's 4. Come on. Can we make it to 5? Don't feel obliged. It's all right. We did that. And I thought, that's really cool. I learned quite a lot about these APIs and actually how devices, you can read into a lot of sensors, and it opens up a hell of a lot of possibilities. And you could do a lot with this. You know, you could do gesture-based device actions. You could do shake to bake. That's intentional. You could do cool stuff. Like, why not? Why not push that boundary and come up with some different UX? And you could make PWAs of this. Why not? Like, learn about PWAs. Air Horner was one that was particularly popular for us, and you could do Tom Riddle's wand. That's the right reference, right? I don't really know Harry Potter. So what happened to that hobby? That was what I said at the start. Now, I was going to try and do some yo-yo tricks, but I just don't think it's worth the embarrassment. So I thought I'd use Phil as a yo-yo. Now, this should work, but I was working on it till about 1 o'clock. So, and I mean this afternoon, not last night. Classic me. Right, here we go. Get throwing.
So much fun.
Yeah, it is. All right, so, and I can flick it back up, cool. And I'd want to do a rad sleeper. Cool, right? And then when it times out, cool, this is a good one. The kids on the playground will be going wild for this. Oh, poor little sigh. Sad Phil. Yeah, so that's device motion. And then that is pretty much it. I've tried to squeeze in as much as I can in your valuable time. And yeah, the idea is explore things, try things, push boundaries. The web platform is an amazing thing that we all have access to, and perspective drives this innovation. It doesn't all have to be free boxes and gradient text. You can get out of that siloed thinking that we all seem to go down, break different paths, learn different things, become an amazing problem solver, hoard your ideas, and when you're inspired, make stuff. And profit just always feels like the right one to end on. Very markety. So what next? Over the course of the conference, although it's nearly over, last time I said this, I was nearer the start of the day, so it made more sense. But think of things that you'd be interested in making and write them down. It can be anything, any ideas, 5 ideas, whatever you like. Something that just sparks something for you. At the end of the day, as I say again, the web platform is an amazing thing, and we all have access to it, and we can all build. The only limit is your imagination. At the end of the day, it is all just pixels. So go ahead and make stuff. Oh, why is this here? Hey, Phil, we did it.
Yay.
And that's it. Thank you for your time.